What's happening, everybody? Thanks for tuning back into another episode of the podcast. It is Saturday morning, about 8:30 right now. I know I said I was going to put the pod out last Friday, Friday night, last night. So again, running into some technical difficulty shit. I got about, I don't know, like 95% of the way through the pod last night. I was like 50-something minutes in when I realized that my mic wasn't picking up any of the audio. So that's cool. I just sat in my room and talked to nobody for 55 minutes. It was all just unusable and useless. So for anybody that was wondering, I don't know if anybody really noticed or cared, but for anybody that was waiting for it last night, my apologies. I just, every now and again I run into some technical shit that, sucks, but that's the reason it didn't come out last night. But I'm trying to record it here bright and early Saturday morning, so I can put it out here by late morning or about midday. So at least you guys will have it. Thank you guys too for reading the trade email yesterday. I had a lot of fun writing that one. It's kind of fun. That was a big, not fiasco really, but kind of a fiasco. That whole trade there with Case and Abby. That was a fun one to write. At the end of the day, there's no hard feelings with anybody as much as hostile as the group chat gets. But, overall it was really funny. And like I said, my email and in the group chat even too, I think the league really needed something like that to happen to kind of spice it up a little bit. So that was fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed the email yesterday. Thank you for reading it. It's just a little short trade recap. It was mainly just my opinion and me bitching to Colin essentially about the trade. So, but nevertheless, I thought it was fun. Okay, let's go ahead and just jump right into it here. Week 8. And we're going to go ahead and start with me and Liv. We got ourselves a little domestic battle here. Right now, Liv is projected 125.9 to my 117.4. And I think that's totally justifiable. Totally makes sense, and I'll explain why here. So go ahead and start on Liv's side. It's got Jared Goff going against Miami. I don't think it's a bad matchup. Detroit, they got absolutely shut down by Dallas last week on the road. They're back at home. As far as I know, and from what I've read, they should have their full arsenal back. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think he's still technically labeled questionable, but everything I've read says he's going to be healthy. They get DeAndre Swift back. Hawkinson cleared his injury designation. So I don't think it's a terrible spot for Jared Goff here, just kind of as a streaming option. I know Liv has Justin Herbert on bye this week, but I don't think Goff's too bad of a shout here. Who I absolutely love, though, is Derrick Henry against Houston. This one, as someone who's playing against Liv, this one horrifies me because I think Derrick Henry is just going to mow these fuckers down. Houston's allowing like 5.5 yards per carry, which is the 4th highest in the league. And I just don't see a situation in which Derrick Henry isn't getting the ball pretty much this entire game. I know he has been decent this year. He's the 8th ranked running back in the league, and he had 3 straight weeks of getting 25 plus. He fell back a little bit at 18, almost 19 points last week against Indianapolis. But that being said, he still had 130 rushing yards. I think this is going to be the Derrick Henry explosion game. I think this is going to be like 150 plus yards, 2 touchdowns, probably 35 fantasy points. So, like I said, as someone who's playing against Liv, this one scares the shit out of me. If you're Liv, I think you love that matchup against Houston with Derrick Henry. Devin Singletary, I like his matchup as well. Buffalo's coming fresh off a bye last week. They're playing at home against Green Bay, who have been struggling pretty bad this year. Sunday Night Football, I don't think there's anything not to like here about Singletary. He's definitely one of the lineup blocks for Buffalo for sure. CeeDee Lamb against Chicago. I was curious last week how Dak was going to look in his first game back after injury or after his thumb surgery, and he didn't look too bad. I think he had like 200 and something yards and a touchdown. It was about what you'd expect for a guy coming back off some missed time. I think Chicago presents not exactly a tough matchup, but I think they're capable. That being said, I do like Dallas in this game. I don't think they struggle at home. And CeeDee Lamb is the best offensive weapon they've got. In my opinion, at least in their wide receiver core. So I don't think you dislike that matchup with Lamb against Chicago at all. I do dislike Darnell Mooney, however, in their other wide receiver spot, on the other side of the ball there playing against Dallas on the road. He's more than likely going to get Trayvon Diggs as his shadow. And I don't see him having a big game, and I think this is a game that Chicago struggles with, especially in Dallas, where that defense has proven to be just insane at home. So don't love Mooney as much, but in they're going to have to throw the ball. Chicago is and they looked okay doing it last week against New England, but I think this is a tough one. But for game script alone, I think there's a little bit of value on Mooney there. George Kittle playing on the road at L.A. Kittle was really good last week. He had about 100 yards and a touchdown for about 22 fantasy points. I think he could have somewhat of a similar game too, especially because Deebo Samuel's out, and I'll kind of touch on that here on my side of the things because that obviously directly influences me. But I don't hate Kittle at all in this matchup, and San Francisco historically plays LA pretty tough, so I know he didn't do anything against LA the first time around. They played him back in week 4. He had 2 catches for 24 yards, but in an offense that I think is going to need him a little bit more this week, I don't think that he's in a bad spot at all. I love Michael Carter this week, running back for the Jets. His situation got a lot better now that Breece Hall went down with injury. I think Carter's going to become the guy. I know they did trade for James Robinson, but he's only had, I think, 3 days of practice with them before this first game's coming up. So I think it's going to be kind of similar to what we saw with McCaffrey in his first game with San Francisco. I think they're going to rely on Michael Carter to get most of the work done, and I think he's pretty much a lineup lock in this case. And the Jets are such a rush-heavy offense anyway. I like Michael Carter here against New England. In terms of how that game's going to go, I could see the Jets beating those guys. They're playing at home. They're playing pretty hot right now, so I almost like the Jets anyway, and I think how they're going to do that. I think this game remains pretty close. I don't think anybody takes a huge lead, so I see Michael Carter getting a lot of touches in that one. And then finally, Atlanta's defense against Carolina. It's kind of a tough one. They looked pretty good against Tampa Bay. They're still not scoring a ton of points, and it's still overall it's a pretty bad team that did just lose McCaffrey. So you like the Falcons maybe a little bit as a streamer in that aspect, but they also did get just murdered by Cincinnati last week for -6 points. Those aren't even in the same conversation of two offenses, with Cincinnati and Carolina that they're facing. So I think there's a little bit more value there. Over Atlanta's only the 25th ranked defense, so it's not it's not the strongest play, but as a streamer, yeah, it's not the worst thing ever. So overall for Liv, it's some pretty good matchups. For, like I said, it's about a 126 point projection. I don't that makes sense to me. When you go over to my side here, I've got some struggles. I'm only projected at 117. It's because I've had both Ezekiel Elliott and Deebo Samuel go down to injury this week. I still am. I'm kind of playing with my lineup now that I've gotten a couple trades done and some players in, but I'll kind of just go over that here in a little bit. So we'll start at Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow has been really, really good lately. He's kind of catapulted himself into that number 4 overall QB rank right now. He absolutely cooked New Orleans back in week 6 for 300 yards. And then Atlanta last week for 481 yards and 4 total touchdowns. The Browns, playing in Cleveland is going to be a little bit tougher, but it's the value on Joe Burrow right now and how much that offense throws the ball. Yeah, it's he's always. I think Joe Burrow is going to be kind of matchup proof, especially here in these last few weeks where he's kind of figured it out. He did lose Jamar Chase to injury, which hurts him a little bit, but luckily I've got Tyler Boyd, who's gonna his value vaults up pretty hard. He's going to be wide receiver 2 now instead of wide receiver 3. I think T Higgins obviously shoots back up into wide receiver 1 territory, but both Joe Burrow and Tyler Boyd, I like their matchups. At the end of the day, Cleveland still isn't very good. I think they struggle to contain the air ball here for Cincinnati and Joe Burrow. And plus Joe Burrow's actually, we're starting to see him run the ball a little bit too. He's never really been crazy mobile, but last 2 games, he's got 2 rushing touchdowns in his last 2 games, 25 rushing yards in week 6, and then 20 last week against Atlanta. So if he keeps chipping in on the ground, I think it's not a bad spot for Joe Burrow. And that being said, for Tyler Boyd as well. Kamara against Vegas, kind of a tougher one because surprisingly Vegas has a pretty good rush defense. As bad as that team is, when you watch them, you don't think they're very good, but they actually have a very capable rush D. So I'm not sure how effective Kamara is going to be as a rusher. But luckily, he's a pretty dominant pass catcher. So if they throw the ball to him more so than they try to just rush him up the middle, I think that's where his success is going to come from. I do like the Saints in this game. They're a home underdog, and I do like them at home this week. And obviously, Kamara is going to be playing a part of that. So he's still. I would love to see him get in the fucking end zone, though. He has yet to score this season. He's putting up decent points. Last 3 weeks, 25, 18, 17 and a half. So he's a very capable running back 1 in fantasy. But I'd like to see him get in the fucking end zone. I think it's possible he does it in this one, but it's probably going to have to be, on a dump off pass or something, or like a goal line rush or something. So I'm not sure how I feel about Kamara. I think overall it's not too bad. Deonta Foreman, running back out of Carolina, who I just traded Matt for. Like I said, I was desperate for running backs, especially with Zeke now going down. I need all the help I can get. And I don't hate Foreman here at all, especially because he's been ever since McCaffrey's gone, they were kind of figuring out that backfield, and he was going to split with Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard's actually going to be out of this game with an ankle injury, so that for me, luckily, that helps. Foreman's going to get most of the work, hopefully. Last week, he had 15 carries for 118 yards. Yeah, and I still it's kind of tough because he's it's a new situation at running back in that offense, but if he gets the work, and I think this game remains close the whole time, so he should get the volume. The game script should work in his favor. I don't hate his matchup. Obviously, it would be better if I had one of my maybe Zeke, I guess, because he's been playing better, but we'll see how that one goes. Donovan Peoples-Jones, not sure if I'm going to use him quite yet. I just have him in my lineup for now. He's becoming kind of Cleveland's go-to wide receiver. He gets a tough-ish matchup against Cincinnati, but in a game where I think Cleveland's really going to have to throw the ball to stay in this one, he's become kind of their deep threat. So it's not a bad play if I decide to go that route. Like I said, I don't know yet, but if I have to use him, it's kind of boom or bust. Luckily, he plays on Monday, so if I do play him and it's close, I'll have a couple guys going in that Monday night game. So Peoples-Jones is kind of like a meh matchup there. Gesicki, I traded Abby Freiermuth, so I picked up Gesicki, who's been actually, I know Gesicki's not great, but he has been getting the targets as of late anyway to support me using him. He's gotten 7 targets in his last 2 games, which is nice for a tight end. Back in week 6, he had 7 catches for 69 yards and 2 touchdowns. Last week, he had the same targets, 7, but he only had 3 catches for 27. So they're definitely trying to use him, which is nice to see. And I think that continues against Detroit, who's just a porous pass defense. They have a porous rush defense. Miami has several ways that they can attack this game. So if they just keep using them like they have been here lately, if I can get somewhere around around 10 points out of Gesicki this week, I'd be happy. This is a game where I do like Miami on the road here. I think they I think Detroit's defense is just too bad to keep up with that offense. So I just hope they actually involve Gesicki rather than just throw to Tyreek Hill and Waddle. Wan'Dale Robinson, he's probably who I'm going to put in the wide receiver spot instead of the flex. But for now, this is just kind of what I've got. Wan'Dale Robinson, he's kind of becoming the guy in the Giants' pass offense, which isn't great. It's still a pretty rush heavy on the ground, offense with Daniel Jones, who rushes the ball a lot, and then obviously Saquon gets the ball 25 times a game to rush. But in the case that they need to pass, Wan'Dale Robinson has kind of been the guy. If the game script allows it against Seattle, which I think it will, I think there's going to be a lot of points in it. I think they're going to try to throw, and obviously Wan'Dale Robinson is kind of a flyer pick, this week for me. But I did lose Deebo Samuel to injury, so I kind of have to just make do with what I got. So I think Robinson's I think he's not too bad of a pick. And then finally, got the Philly defense, who I just love. They're one of the elite defenses in the league. They're currently ranked number 3. They're coming off a bye, playing at home against Pittsburgh, and that bad Pittsburgh offense. Kenny Pickett, who's just been saucing out interceptions. I think there's a lot of value here on Pittsburgh. I think they're a minus 10 or 11 point favorite. I personally think they cover. I think they win by 2 touchdowns at home. I like the game script where Pittsburgh's going to have to throw the ball to stay in this game. A lot of turnover value for this Philly defense. So love that pick. It's probably my favorite matchup of the week here out of everything. That being said, though, it's the injuries are kind of hurting me this week. The Deebo and Zeke injuries. I'm kind of having to play these lower tier guys, these lower tier wide receivers. So only projected at 117.4 to lives about 126. I think that's totally fair. I'm going in with low expectations. If I can find a way to win this one, that would be great. I did just get Mostert come in, from the trade. I'll definitely be throwing him in against Detroit. So that may help a little bit, but overall, it's Liv's matchups of Derrick Henry especially just horrifies me. I think this is the Derrick Henry explosion game, So just that being said, that alone, I think Liv gets a little bit of the edge here. Okay, moving on to Emily and Colin. Current projection, Colin is 130.8 to M's 121.9. We'll go ahead and start with Colin because he had Fournette play on Thursday night. It wasn't too bad of an effort from Fournette. Touchdowns this year has been kind of his bugaboo, but he did manage to get in the end zone against Baltimore. He had 24 yards on the ground and 34 in the air and a score. So a total of 14.8, not too bad. I feel like Fournette in that bad Tampa Bay offense this year, who looked just miles different than they had the last couple of years. Fournette's going to be touchdown dependent, but he did get in, so I don't think you can complain about 15 fantasy points there. Colin's got Dak going, at home against Chicago. I think I talked about it a little bit already, but I think that's a decent matchup for Dak and the Cowboys. I don't think the home and home stuff matters a lot in the NFL, but the Cowboys seem to just kind of operate on a different level when they're at home. And I do like Dak. I do like Dak at home here. But I think you temper expectations a little bit. That Chicago defense is pretty tough, and they're good at forcing turnovers. But I think there's enough value here on the Cowboys and Dak to be okay. Like I said, he was decent in his first week back after injury, and if he's just going to continue to be healthy, I think we see maybe a similar stat line that we did last week. He had 207 yards and a touchdown for 14 fantasy points. I think he's a little bit better than that, but something around there. I think between 15 and 20 is going to be his line this week. Saquon Barkley, just complete matchup proof. He's been a monster all year. He's got 4 touchdowns. He doesn't have any week this season where he's been under double-digit fantasy points. He's had 19, 18, 19, and 20 in his last 4. And Seattle does not prove to be a tough matchup for him at all. They give up 4.5 yards per carry, and they give up an average of 104 yards per game to running backs. Because this is such a rush-heavy offense, and that's kind of the game plan, and how good he's been this year, this is going to be just Saquon just busting it up the middle for most of this game, I think. So that's one to be worried about if I was them. So don't be surprised if Barkley has a biggie, this week. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he is questionable. He's still dealing with his concussion protocol. I don't think he's officially cleared it yet, but it sounds like there's a good chance he's going to play in this game, which will help Detroit massively. And I think the game script works in his favor here. I think it's a high-scoring game against Miami. They're going to have to throw the ball, and as long as St. Brown's healthy, I think there's going to be a lot of work there for him. So St. Brown's in a good spot there. I do like Chris Olave as well against Vegas. I talked about that Vegas rush defense being really good, but they're getting chewed up in the air. And in this offense where Chris Olave is becoming the number one wide receiver, with the injuries that New Orleans is dealing with Landry still not being good to go, and Michael Thomas, he's being a hospital patient for the last 4 years, it seems like. Olave is kind of becoming the go-to guy in this offense, and as long as Andy Dalton, who is surprisingly getting the start again this week after he threw like 4 interceptions last week, as long as that production's there on Andy Dalton's side, I think Olave's in a good spot. It's definitely there for him. Like I said, I also like the Saints at home this week, so I think it's not too bad there. Zach Ertz, Zach Ertz has been really, really good this year. He had, from weeks 1 to 6, all double-digit points. He kind of came back to earth in week 7 against New Orleans, where he had 2 catches for 21 yards. But he gets a great matchup this week against Minnesota, who give up the 5th most fantasy points to tight ends. I really think we see a better game out of Kyler Murray. Not that last week was bad, but the defense for them scored pretty much all their points. And that offense is becoming very, very pass heavy now that DeAndre Hopkins is back and all those options they've got to throw the ball. So I really like Zach Ertz this week, especially with, like I said, how many points to fantasy to tight ends that Minnesota gives up. DeAndre Swift is back and he's healthy, which is great for Colin and great for Detroit. He's such a huge part of that offense, and now that he's not dealing with any injury designation, I think he gets the ball a lot in this game. He needs a good pass catcher too, so PPR points, just game script alone, I think Swift's heavily involved in here. As long as they don't get blown out. I don't think Detroit gets blown out. I think they keep this within reason where they get to use Swift for the most part, but as long as that happens, I think Swift's in a good spot. And then the Giants' defense against New England. They've got the 7th-ranked defense. They're pretty sneaky good, honestly. They put up weeks 4 through 6, 18 against Pittsburgh, 13 against Miami, and 24 against Green Bay. And they managed to get 7 out of Denver, which is not too bad either. The QB situation in New England is tricky because it's Zappy, and I think Mac Jones is probably coming back this week, but both those guys are very turnover heavy. And I think this is a tough game for New England, in playing on the road against the Jets. So I like the Jets as a streamer this week. I think that's a decent pick. So overall, Colin's got some good solid matchups for sure. I think the 130.8 sounds about right for his projection. Moving on to M. So she's got Josh Allen going against Green Bay. I love this matchup. Obviously, I like Josh Allen just anyway, but coming off a bye, they're coming off a week's rest, playing at home, prime time, against a Green Bay team that just sucks this year. So I think Josh Allen just roasts these guys. That's one to be excited about. I love the Bills. I think they were like a 11-point favorite, which is huge, but I honestly might take it. I think they win by 2 touchdowns in this game. The Green Bay secondary is pretty hit or miss. They got some talented guys in that secondary, but it's so inconsistent. And I think just anybody who plays Buffalo and how many offensive weapons they have, especially in the air, and Josh Allen even too. I don't think you hate Buffalo against anybody or Josh Allen against anybody. So I think that's one to be excited for. Joe Mixon. I definitely think there's some value with Joe Mixon here. I know that's a pretty pass heavy offense, but Cleveland has been getting chewed up on the ground. That rush defense gives up, I think 5 yards per carry to opposing backs, and Mixon has some value here for sure. He has gotten double digits in every week except for week 3. He got 18.1. He's starting to catch some passes too. He has a receiving touchdown. He's had over 10 receiving yards in every game. He had 33 last week. I think he's definitely usable in that sense too, but they may try to rush him a little bit more on the ground in this one with how beatable that Cleveland rush defense is. So I like Mixon to get in the end zone. I think he's going to be the red zone guy. I think when Cincinnati gets into the red zone and near the end zone, I think they're just going to be trying to bust it up the middle. So I think there's definitely a lot to look forward there with Mixon. Travis Etienne, his situation got a lot better too now with James Robinson getting traded. He's going to be the guy in Jacksonville, and you can't help but like him tomorrow morning against the Broncos. That game's in London, and the Broncos are just being killed on the ground. We talk about how elite their defense is, but it's elite as a passing core, or as like in the air. But they're very beatable on the ground. Breece Hall last week on the Jets before he blew his knee was crushing the Broncos on the ground. And ETN's his value here is huge, I think, because I think they're going to be trying to just beat the Broncos on the ground. I think that's Jacksonville's path to success in this one. It's pretty inconsistent passing offense, and against a Broncos defense, trying to show out in London, I could see this game being pretty low scoring and Jacksonville trying to get it done on the ground. So I love ETN in this one. I don't love Thielen, however. He's getting some touchdowns this year, but for him, it's kind of become touchdown or bust. Whereas on the other side, Justin Jefferson is kind of becoming the go-to guy. Arizona's been really tough against opposing wide receivers too. I think they've only allowed just a handful of touchdowns to wide receivers this year in fantasy. So tough one for Thielen. I think this is a little bit of a tough one for Minnesota too. They're going to struggle to wing the ball out, I think, but it's theoretically possible that Thielen gets in for maybe a score, but it's been kind of a hit or miss year for him. Like I said, I think it's pretty touchdown dependent for his usage. I'm not in love with Garrett Wilson either. New England's going to be playing tough after getting embarrassed by the Bears on prime time here last week. And the Jets, like I said, their Jets are rush heavy, so they're going to be trying to do most of their work on the ground here, I think. Yeah, that's not a whole lot more to say about that. I think temper expectations for Garrett Wilson. For Goddard, I think you love him. I love Philly in this game. They're a huge favorite. I think they're a 10.5 or 11-point favorite. I believe that they're going to cover at home. It's been great for Goddard here in 4 of the 6 weeks. He's put up over 10 fantasy points. He put up 17.5 against Arizona, but he did only put up 4.2 against Dallas, which is fair. Dallas is tough on D, but I think he gets a much better matchup this week against Pittsburgh, who have not shown that they're capable of stopping the pass. And I think Goddard plays a big role in that offense. Kareem Hunt, kind of tough to be excited about Kareem Hunt, right? He's only had 2 weeks where he has over double-digit fantasy points. He's not factoring into this offense at all. When they kept him to play alongside Chubb, we thought we'd maybe see more of a tandem, and he would be kind of the pass catcher. But as good as Chubb has been this year, he's running back number 2 in fantasy. I think they're kind of just trusting in him to get the work done, and they're not really using Kareem Hunt. I don't really see that changing this week against Cincinnati, who have been have been decent against the rush, but like I said, I think they're just going to pound Nick Chubb this whole game, and I think it's tough to see a whole lot of value in Kareem Hunt. And then Tennessee, they get a decent matchup, I think, with Houston. I think it's a capable streaming option. They were insane against Indianapolis, so they're definitely coming off a hot matchup where they got 23 fantasy points, shitload of turnovers. I think they force some turnovers here against Houston for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just the turnover capability for Houston. I think a lot of this game's going to be on the ground. Their passing options, their pass catchers just aren't great. I think it's going to be a lot of Dameon Pierce trying to run the ball. So if they keep Dameon Pierce in check, which I think they probably will, I think it's a decent spot for Houston. I wouldn't expect 23 fantasy points out of them, but I think somewhere around like between 7 and 10 is reasonable for that one. So overall, when you look at it, like I said, it's 130.1 essentially to 122 fantasy points is what the projection is in favor of Colin. I think that's fair. With Saquon, St. Brown, Olave, Ertz, Swift, I like those matchups better than I like some of M's. The Thielens, Garrett Wilson, Kareem Hunt. But you never know. With Josh Allen, who gets a hugely favorable matchup in this one, I think, and Joe Mixon, who gets a good matchup, ETN. I think this one's close. I think you give the nod to Colin a little bit on the points, but I do believe Emily keeps it close. So I'm sorry, Em. I did you dirty last week. I was wrong about everything, pretty much involving your matchup. Maybe I'll be wrong again about literally everything. But like I said, just initially, that's how I'm calling it. Okay, moving on here to Case and Sam. Case gets a pretty substantial favorite here, 131.6 to Sam's 113.4. Let's see why that is. Casey gets Jalen Hurts back off a bye against Pittsburgh. This is a no-brainer here. Pittsburgh is terrible. Philly's probably, when you think of home field advantage, you think of just a very few teams where that matters. I think Philly is one of them. I think Buffalo is one of them. I think Dallas is one of them. And Philly playing at home, they're undefeated. I just love this play. I would argue that he might be the top play this week, just with everything else. And Pittsburgh's defense allowing the 9th most points to quarterbacks. I don't see any situation in which Philly isn't up big, and Hurts isn't going to struggle in this one at all. So great play for him. Not so much for Najee Harris, I don't think. I just think game script phases him out of this one, where they're just not going to be able to utilize him. I think Pittsburgh is going to get into a situation which they're going to have to throw the ball. And Najee will be active early if they can keep it close, but I don't love his projection this week. They only allow like 4 yards per carry to backs, which is actually not too bad, but like I said, it's just Pittsburgh's going to get behind so big in this game, I think, and they're going to have to throw. So not a great outlook for Najee Harris this week, I don't think. But for Nick Chubb, it's the opposite. I think you have to like Nick Chubb no matter who he plays. That whole offense is going through him. Cincinnati's been respectable against running backs, but being at home, how much work he gets, I think even if he has like a medium-ish meh kind of day, I think it's still going to be within double digits. I think he's going to get somewhere between 10 and 15 is his floor, which is insane to have a guy like that on your team. So maybe temper expectations just a little bit for Nick Chubb, but I mean, he's the number 2 running back in the league for a reason. I think just volume alone makes him just like a must start no matter what. God, you gotta love Stephon Diggs this week. We're talking about it with just the Buffalo offense. They got a week's rest playing a bad team. Prime time at home. Just how is Buffalo not going to just destroy this game? I just don't see that not happening. And Diggs he's wide receiver 1. He's 32.8 last week against Kansas City, 26 against Pittsburgh. He had 47.8 against Tennessee. He's starting to string together some touchdowns now. after going 2 straight weeks without getting him. I love him to get a touchdown this week. He's going to get their best. He's going to get Green Bay's best coverage, but that doesn't mean shit against Buffalo and against Stephon Diggs. He's such an elite route runner, and he can break coverage against anybody. So I love Diggs to get in the end zone. I think he can get 100 yards and a touchdown for at least 20 fantasy points. Love him this week. And maybe not quite as high for Waddle, but you have to love him against Detroit too. He had 12.8 last week. He had 18.9 against Minnesota. He had 129 yards in that game. I think he suffers a little bit just for having to split with Tyreek Hill. If it was anybody else alongside him in that offense, Waddle would just be the go-to guy. But that being said, he's still getting a ton of yards in the share with Tyreek Hill. 88 yards, 129 yards. He had 102 one week, 171, 69. So he's not struggling getting targets and getting yards. And Miami and Mike McDaniels do a good job of spreading the ball around to their 2 stud wide receivers. So I don't think there's any. I don't think that stops against Detroit at all. So you gotta like Waddle. You gotta like Waddle in that one. Darren Waller. If you read my trade email, you'll know that how I feel about Darren Waller. I just don't think he's really that effective. He was good at the start of the season. He's dealing with a hamstring injury, which historically in the NFL just lingers with guys throughout the whole season. I've had a lot of players deal with hamstring injury. I think that's why Debo's down this week. I don't know. It's like Waller's either going to be really good or he's going to get like 4-0. There's not really an in between. I really just see this offense going through Josh Jacobs mainly right now with how good he's playing. And if it's not going to be Josh Jacobs, it's going to be Devontae Adams. He's in a bad spot where he's just got 2 elite players on his team right now who are just probably going to get the ball more than he is. And like I said, he's dealing with a hamstring injury. So like, how much is he going to use? He's even questionable for the game. So not a big fan of Darren Waller just in general, but this week especially against a tough-ish New Orleans defense who are playing in New Orleans. Now Michael Pittman Jr. is in a little bit of an interesting situation. Frank Reich and the Colts essentially benched Matt Ryan for the rest of the season, making him QB2 on that team, which is kind of crazy because I feel like Matt Ryan is. I think Matt Ryan sucks, but he's been okay. I don't know if he's been bench worthy, but apparently the Colts disagree. So I'll be curious to see how Pittman and Ellinger. I don't know if it's a soft G or hard G, whatever. I don't know anything really about the guy. But he's gonna. I'll be curious to see how his relationship with him is. In this first game, I know Ellinger. The only thing I know about him is he's pretty mobile. Like in college, he can move a little bit. So, kind of take that how it is. But I mean, he could also throw to Pittman 15 times in this game. It's just kind of a big question mark. So, it's Pittman against a bad offense. Washington's secondary is bad, and just that team in general sucks. So I do still like the Colts in this game. I know it's kind of tricky to bet on a team who just benched Matt Ryan and then their starting quarterback, but I am taking the Colts spread in this game, the -2.5. And I actually bet all this before I made the podcast, so I can't go back on my word like I did last week and was fucking wrong about everything. So don't know how to feel about Pittman. Could be good, could be bad. It all just kind of remains to be seen. And New England's defense it's very streamable against the Jets. It's still the Jets at the end of the day, even though they're playing better. If they can stop the rush, they'll be successful in this game. It's going to be a lot of Michael Carter, I think. It's going to be a little James Robinson. But yeah, I don't think it's a bad streaming option. I do like the Jets at home this week against New England. But I don't think it's like a blowout or anything like that. I think New England, they're the 6th ranked defense. I think they could get somewhere around 10-ish. I think they get 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in the ballpark there. So that is how I feel about that. Good matchups for KC this week. Obviously, it's no surprise he's projected at 130. That I've never seen Case projected at anything less than 125, which is which just speaks to how good his fucking team is. That's why you didn't deserve fucking Dalvin Cook, by the way. You did not fucking need him, and you know that. All right, let's see here. Let's look at Sam. So Sam, he's got Tua going against Detroit. I think you love him there as long as he doesn't have fucking yogurt brain every time he gets hit. I think you like Tua for sure. Detroit's very beatable in the air. As long as they don't try to rush them to death, which, I mean, Detroit is, they have, like, I think the worst rush defense and like a bottom 3 pass defense. So they can attack this game in many different ways. I'll be curious to see what route Miami goes, but they should throw the ball, I think. And with Tyreek on one side, Waddle on the other, Gesicki, hopefully he gets some passes as well for my sake and for Sam's sake. I think you like Tua and you like Miami in this one. Who I don't like is Montgomery, though, who is ceding more and more time to Khalil Herbert. I know Montgomery finished with like 12 points last week, and I think that's what you hope for with him now in an offense in which he's almost splitting carries. But I just don't like Cincinnati in this game at all against Dallas. I fucking drawn a blank. I'm looking right at it too. That's sad. I just don't love Chicago. I could see Chicago getting behind big and Montgomery not being able to kind of do his thing in this game and not get the snap share here to be effective. But I'm wrong literally all the time, so I could be wrong here. But if Chicago doesn't keep this thing close, then Montgomery, I think, kind of fades out of the game script a little bit. I think Darrell Henderson Jr. is not a bad play right now. He's not really competing with touches for anybody. Cam Akers is going out the door. They just don't like him. God, they tried to trade him to Carolina, and Carolina said, no, thank you, for no reason. They just like, we don't want him. No thanks. So he's out the door, which means Henderson is going to get most of the workload here. And I think it's a decent matchup for him. I'm not sure how LA is going to attack this game. They're going to throw to Cooper Kupp 20 times probably, but I think they should try to run the ball a little bit here. It's just going to be a volume thing really with him. Is more so I think what keeps him a little bit relevant because he is the only running back, or he's their best running back anyway. He's not necessarily their only running back. I think they had like 5 different guys run the ball here last week or 2 weeks ago for him. But coming off a bye. They kind of had some extra time to figure out what they wanted to do here. Rams are playing at home. I do like the Rams in this game. I think Henderson's involved in some way, but maybe just don't expect a big like 20-ish game for them. They're going to throw the ball to Cooper Kupp most of this time. Jefferson, going back to that Minnesota-Arizona game, like I said, Arizona has been tough in the air to opposing wide receivers. So I think you have to temper expectations a little bit for Jefferson. And the guy's so talented, and I think he's easily a top 3 wide receiver in the league in terms of just his athleticism and natural capability. He just has a very mediocre quarterback thrown to him in Kirk Cousins. If he had an elite quarterback, JJ would be just fucking unstoppable. But it's his quarterback play. It's Cousins is mediocre, and like I said, it's Arizona has been tough against wide receivers. So whereas I think of another volume play here for Jefferson keeps him relevant, and you play him against anybody no matter what. But I think you have to just expect a little bit less from him this week. I think he's definitely getting between like 10 and 20, more so than like 20 plus this week. I think he could get somewhere between like 12 and 15 points, just volume if he can get some catch and passes. That's what I think there. But I do love Devontae Adams. I know he's questionable, but he was just dealing with like a little bit of an illness thing or sickness thing. Apparently he told his coaching staff and the media that he's going to be fine to play on Sunday. And he gets a good matchup against New Orleans. Devontae Adams, he's all but one game that he's played has finished in double digits. He's getting almost 100 yards in all those games. Like he had 95 in week 7. He had 124, 101, 141. He's very clearly the guy in that offense, which he should be. And I think they try to pass the ball in this game. They definitely should. Josh Jacobs will be busy in this game because New Orleans whereas they should have a stout rush defense. They got murdered last week on the ground by Eno Benjamin, but they're definitely beatable on the pass, and I think that's going to be Vegas's route for success. I think this game has a decent amount of points in it, whereas I do like New Orleans to win at home. I think Devontae Adams plays a huge part in this game, and he's very active. So I think you love him for sure, even a little bit more than Justin Jefferson. Hawkinson is cleared from any injury or illness or any of that kind of stuff, and I think he plays a big factor in this game as well. Like I said, it's game script. Detroit's going to have to throw the ball at some point in this game, whether it's early or they get behind big late. It's going to be this ball's going to be in the air a lot in this game, and Hawkinson's a huge part of this offense against Miami, who's beatable in the air for sure. So a little bit lower scores for Hawkinson here in the last 2 weeks. He had 8.8 against Dallas, which makes sense. Tough game. He only had one catch for 6 yards against New England. Again, on the road, tougher. I get it. But he had 40.9 against Seattle at home, and then he had 10.8 against Minnesota. We'll see a better version of Hawkinson in this game, I think. I think he gets at least double digits. He could score, for sure. I think that's reasonable as well. So you got to like Hawkinson there. James Conner, currently sitting in Sam's flex. He is out. I won't really go into that. So Sam, find a flex play for James Conner, maybe Drake London. If you feel confident in James Robinson getting a little bit of workload, I think you could play him there too. Or even maybe Deontay Johnson against Philly just for his volume because Pittsburgh's going to have to throw the ball. So whatever you want to do on that one, just make sure you get James Conner out of your flex. And then the Rams defense against San Francisco. I don't hate this play too much, especially with kind of how that offense looks in San Francisco right now. I know they did add McCaffrey, but they did lose Debo. I think if they can figure out a way to just keep McCaffrey at bay, I think Rams win this game at home. I think they'll be able to get to Jimmy Garoppolo, who the Chiefs just fucking got to him a lot in that game. And I think Aaron Donald and the gang do the same thing. So I don't think it's like a top tier defensive play this week, but I think it's a fine streaming option. I think they can get around 10 points. Like I said, I think the Rams win this game at home. They're coming off a bye. Yeah, and San Francisco, they didn't look great. Jimmy Garoppolo didn't look great against Kansas City. I think he'll be a little bit better in this one, but I think it's a capable defensive play for LA. So 131.6 for Case, 113 for Sam. Probably fair. I think Casey's just is stacked, and he has all the top tier players who are just kind of matchup proof. But this week, especially with Jalen Hurts against Pittsburgh, Diggs against Green Bay, and Waddle against Detroit, it's tough to argue against how good those matchups are. With that, give them the lead. That being said, I think Sam keeps it closer than the projection allows. I think Tua has a good matchup. I like Devontae Adams a lot, and I like Hawkinson a lot. So. Whereas I think Case wins this one, I think Sam keeps this a little bit closer than the projections show. So, sorry, Sam, but that's when you play against Casey. I would say that probably against anybody who plays Case. Okay, moving on to Ben versus Al. We'll go ahead and start with Al since he had two guys playing on Thursday night. He's projected 128.8 to Ben's 117.2. That started on Thursday night with Lamar Jackson, who finished with 25.8 fantasy points. He had 238 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and he had 43 rushing yards. So it was a good game for Lamar. I actually bet on Baltimore to win this game against Tampa Bay. Even in Tampa Bay, it's just a tough look for Tampa Bay, and that offense right now just looks not great. Brady just is starting to look like a 45-year-old guy, despite being pretty good. But I always liked Baltimore in this game, and Jackson had his best game for sure that he had in the last few weeks. He was a monster at the start of the season. Weeks 1, 2, and 3, he had 29, 58, and 49. And then weeks 4 through 7, he had 15, 16, 18, and 10. Nice to see him back up at almost 26 fantasy points this week. He was a lot better in this game. And then he also had Chris Godwin go on the other side of the ball there for Tampa Bay. He had 6 catches for 75 yards. He's definitely becoming more and more of a focal point in this offense. He's coming off an ACL injury last year, and it was Mike Evans early, but now that he's kind of getting more games under his feet here, Godwin is becoming more and more of a part of the offense. So 6 catches, 75 yards, 13.5 points. That's not too bad out of one of your wide receivers. I think that's not too bad, especially with how bad this Tampa Bay offense has been here this year. Getting anything out of those guys right now, I think you're happy with. And now Josh Jacobs has becoming just an elite. It's crazy. He's become an elite running back. He was always good, but last year he was decent. I think he was like running back, like, I don't know, 15 through 20, somewhere in there. But he's running back 4 right now. He's had 3 straight games with 30 plus fantasy points. He has 6 touchdowns in his last 3 games. He should get one against New Orleans. I think it's a very middle of the road rush defense, and it just volume's sake. They're just pounding Jacobs up the middle this game, or just this season, and I think that doesn't change for this game. So I think you got to like Josh Jacobs here in a game where I think they're going to keep up with New Orleans. I think they're going to need the points. Josh Jacobs should be involved this whole time. I like him a lot. Now he's got to play Nyheim Hines this week because he's got both Jerick McKinnon on bye and he's got Eckler on bye. It's tough to like a backup running back, right? Especially the backup to Jonathan Taylor. But Hines has pass catching ability. He had 41 receiving yards on 5 catches last week. In a PPR, that will definitely save you. I'm not sure how this game is going to go with Indy and Washington and how much Hines is going to be used. At some point, you really think the Colts are going to try to get Jonathan Taylor like his game, his big game. Could be in this one. But, I think it's tough to rely on Hines. It's kind of like the change of pace pass catcher guy. But if you can get 4 or 5 catches, that's a salvageable running back day for having to use him if you got a guy like Eckler out, So yeah, obviously, I think expectations are low, but there's a little bit of value there with his pass catching ability. Tyreek Hill, you got to love him against Detroit. Same thing I talked about with Waddle. It's all but one game for Tyreek Hill where he's had double-digit fantasy points. His ceiling, or his floor rather, seems to be like 50 yards, which is pretty fucking good, honestly. And he's getting like at least 7 targets every game. So in a game where Miami, I don't know how they're going to attack this, but it's obviously got a lot of it should be in the air. You can't hate Tyreek Hill here. So love him against Detroit. Tonyan against Buffalo. Tonyan's a good option, and Green Bay's obviously going to have to throw the ball in this game. It's just tough to like anybody against Buffalo, I wouldn't like anybody in this matchup, but in a game where Green Bay's going to have to throw the ball, I think Tonyan's a good play. Against the Jets, he had 10 catches for 90 yards, but last week against Washington, he only had 3 catches for 32 yards. So it's boom or bust for sure. He's just one of those guys and playing on kind of just like a not great offense right now, but you do what you got to do, and it could be okay. I think the game script could play in his favor here for a moderately successful fantasy day. Courtland Sutton playing tomorrow morning in London against the Jags. Now, you want Courtland Sutton. He's probably one of the only Broncos you want. It's tough just because the Broncos are fucking so bad and that offense is so bad. But he, except for the last couple of weeks, Sutton had been getting double-digit points in weeks 1 through 5, but then only just 3.4 and 5.3 in the last 2 games. Now, Jacksonville, they're definitely beatable. They're definitely beatable in the air, and you just wonder, if this game stays close the whole time, which I think it is. I think this game sucks. I think this is the one London game this year that they're going to be pissed about because this is going to be bad. It's tough to just love a Broncos pass catcher, but you never know. At some point, Russell Wilson's going to have to look like Russell Wilson, and I've said that several times this season. At some point, the Broncos are going to have to look good on offense. Who knows? It could be this one, but if it is, then Sutton's the guy you want. So, got to take that with a grain of salt. You never know what you're going to get with Sutton. It could be 15, it could be 3. It just depends what Broncos we get in London on Sunday. And then San Francisco against LA. I don't hate it. I don't love it. They got murdered by Kansas City, and obviously it's KC, it's Mahomes. That makes sense. You like Kansas City more than you like the Rams, but they're the 4th ranked defense for a reason. They've been good all year. They just weren't great last week, and they weren't great against Atlanta either. They gave up 22 points, and they're not forcing a whole lot of turnovers right now. It's kind of the issue. So it worries me a little bit in this game with playing in LA. With the Rams coming off a bye, but as I said before, they historically do play the Rams tough. So I think it's a decent streaming option. I think it's like a middle of the pack streaming option. If you can get 7-8 points out of them, I think that's a good day for them in this one. So not too bad of matchups for Al. He's off to a good start here with he got about 40 points out of the 2 guys on Thursday Night Football. Yeah, not too bad there. As for Ben, I like Kyler Murray in this one against Minnesota. He what worries me is Call of Duty just came out, and I know it's like a joke kind of narrative that whenever a new Call of Duty comes out that Kyler Murray's performance plummets, and it is a joke, but there actually is legitimate statistics that prove that that's true. But the Minnesota's allowing the 10th most points to quarterbacks this year, and I think there's a lot of air yardage in this game. So you have to like Kyler Murray in this one, whether you believe in that whole like COD conspiracy thing with him or not. But I think you like Kyler Murray here. I think you have to like McCaffrey no matter what, I think especially in an offense now where Deebo Samuel's not involved, I think they're going to use him pretty multifaceted. He's going to rush for some yards. He might line up in the slot. He could line up in another wide receiver role. He's just such a talented guy, and San Fran uses their offense pretty uniquely. I think you like McCaffrey here. I think you have to use him like that instead of just ramming him up the middle the whole time. It's a pretty stout defense for the Rams up front there on the line. So yeah, I think McCaffrey's fine. I think he's matchup proof. You have to play him no matter what. But I really truly believe this is kind of a toughie for San Francisco this week. So. But for PPR's sake, McCaffrey's just like the GOAT, and for volume's sake, I think he'll be fine. Ramondre Stevenson, God, that guy's been a monster this year. God, he fucked me on Monday Night Football last week when I needed him to get under 19.5, and he couldn't do that. He got 24 pretty much. And it's all volume for him right now. God damn, he's getting so much of the ball. I don't know what happened to Damian Harris, but they told him to go fuck off and go work at McDonald's or something because he is just no longer part of the offense. It's all Ramondre Stevenson. 3 straight weeks of 21 or more points. He had 20 in week 3. His floor seems to be like 12 points, which is crazy. And I think he gets a tough matchup with the Jets. They've allowed the 4th fewest carries to backs this year, but like I said, I think volume-wise, I think you have to like Stevenson. I don't see the Jets. I do like the Jets to win this game, but I don't see them getting far enough ahead where Stevenson has to take a back seat to like a passing offense, So I think Ben should like Stevenson in this one. Same goes for DJ Moore, who, funny enough, like with all the uncertainty and all the change in that Carolina offense, and that just the team in general, they fired their coach. Baker Mayfield lost a starting job. They traded McCaffrey. The one constant in that team has been DJ Moore, who was great last week against was supposed to be good Tampa Bay defense. He had 7 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown for about 20 points. Atlanta faces they face a much easier on paper challenge, against Atlanta than they did in Tampa Bay. So I think you have to like DJ Moore here, he's now literally the only shining spot of that offense now. It might change a little bit with the running back change and Foreman and that kind of stuff. But if it's going to be in the air, it's probably going to go to Moore. So I think you like that against Atlanta. As of right now, Ben's got Rashid Shaheed out of New Orleans in one of his spots. Now, he's definitely like the definition of boomer bust. He had one rush for 44 yards and a touchdown against Cincinnati, and then last week he had one catch, 53 yards and a touchdown for Arizona. So you definitely accept the risk if you play Rashid Shaheed in New Orleans. It's kind of tough with the quarterback situation with Andy Dalton. He either throws a dime or he throws this horrible pick. So you just have to be comfortable with knowing that Shaheed's either going to catch a 60-yard touchdown or he's going to see 0 targets. So kind of just, go at your own risk. Taysom Hill, same exact thing. The guy's the definition of boomer bust. I had him. I dropped him because he either got 40 or he got 0. And the week that he got 40, I had him on my bench because I didn't trust him. You just never know how they're going to use him. They can line him up at quarterback to either QB sneak or throw a couple passes. They could line him up as a running back. They could line him up as a tight end. It's interesting. It's tough to trust Taysom Hill, but if you do, it could very well pay off for you. So Vegas is tough against the rush. So I don't think they're definitely not going to use him as kind of like a running back in almost any sense, I don't think. But if they get down to the goal line and they feel like cucking Alvin Kamara from getting his first touchdown, which they've been doing all year, then you could see Taysom Hill just rush up, just like a little QB sneak, little screen pass to him for a touchdown. Again, the guy's definition of boomer bust, so kind of go with caution on that one. Tony Pollard, love Tony Pollard this week, especially since Zeke's down with a knee injury. Pollard has been kind of chipping away at that workload anyway, and he's proven very capable to be a starting running back. Now he gets his opportunity, and I think this is going to be, as much as it sucks for me, the Tony Pollard game for Dallas. Chicago is very beatable against the run. And Tony Pollard is very good. So I think this is going to be the game that we see Tony Pollard kind of establish himself more so as the lead back for Dallas, more so than Zeke. I think this is the game where he is going to prove to that team that he deserves to have more of the carries. So I think you love Tony Pollard. Bears, like I said, Bears are very beatable. It's a good flex spot for Ben that week. I think that's one of the matchups he probably should like more so than a lot of others. And the same goes for that Dallas defense too. Got Dallas at home. God, last week they had 24 points against Detroit. They had 5 sacks, 3 fumbles, 2 picks. They're playing a terrible offense in Chicago, and Justin Fields. Dallas at home is very frightening. You love the Dallas defense this week. So when you look at everything, I think Ben probably deserves to be the underdog here, but it's close. It's 117 to 128. It's close. I think that's about right. I think Al's matchup here, I think Josh Jacobs plays a huge part, and then Tyreek Hill plays a huge part too. But Ben's got some solid matchups of his own too. I think Murray has a decent game. Ramondre Stevenson's been insane lately, and you could get something out of DJ Moore and Pollard. So I got to give the lean to Al just a little bit here, but I wouldn't be shocked if Ben's matchups find a way to keep this close, if not maybe win. So a little bit of lean to Al, but again, I would maybe hedge a little bit on Ben's spread there if I were betting. All right, next we go to the Matt v. Matt extravaganza here, and we'll start with Matt Morelli because he had Tom Brady go on Thursday night. Not too bad of a day for Brady, the best one we've seen from him in a while. He had 325 yards and a touchdown, 23.1 fantasy points. That's the best we've seen the last 2 weeks. He was shit against Pittsburgh. He was real shit against Carolina. Figured it out against Baltimore, even though he still couldn't get the win at home. But definitely, if you're Matt, definitely a much better sighting out of Brady than you'd been seeing out of him. So good for him there. You gotta love Miles Sanders against Pittsburgh. I love anybody with an Eagles jersey on in this game. And Sanders has been good. He's got 4 touchdowns on the year. Out of looks like 4 out of his 6 games, he's gotten in double-digit fantasy points. I like him to get a touchdown. I think Philly's not going to struggle at all to get in the end zone this game. They're not going to struggle to get in the red zone. Miles Sanders, now that they've finally found a capable running back in that backfield in Miles Sanders, I think there's a lot of. I think it takes some pressure off of Jalen Hurts to feel like he has to run the ball in. Whereas I think he will do that still. I like Sanders to get in for at least one, so he's in a good spot there. Melvin Gordon. Yeah, it's tough, I think Jacksonville is definitely beatable on the ground. I just don't necessarily trust any Bronco to get the job done, especially Melvin Gordon, who is just proven to be exceptionally average, now that Javonte Williams is out. He had 7 last week against the Jets. He had 0.8 against the Chargers. His best weeks came in 3 and 5 when he had 16.5 and 13. And, it was because he caught some passes in that game too. So I'm not sure that's going to be the case in this one. And you never know. Latavius Murray might come in too and do a lot of the work. Tough to trust any Bronco running back right now. So don't necessarily love that spot. But I do love A.J. Brown. Again, Philly, Pittsburgh. A.J. Brown's the number 1 wide receiver. He has a great rapport in his new team with Jalen Hurts. I've bet on A.J. Brown to get a score. I think he plays a big reason why Philly wins big in this one. Love A.J. Brown. He's going with Gallup at wide receiver. Kudos to you and Godspeed. I fucking hated Michael Gallup in like the 2 weeks I had him. He had 3.8 and then 0. I know it might start to get a little bit better for him with Dak being involved and getting back into the rhythm of things coming off injury. He's very talented. He was great last year. It just with Noah Brown and CeeDee Lamb, I wonder where his workload's going to come from, at least as of right now. So, for your sake, Matt, I hope Gallup's better for you than he was for me, but definitely go with caution as he might get fucking 0 points on 2 targets like he did for me. Tyler Higbee is in a good spot, I think. He's one of like the 2 guys who catch passes in that offense. So if it's not Kupp, it's him. I know he was bad last week on week 6 rather against Carolina. He had 1 catch for 7 yards, but every week before that he was good. 11, 17, 10, 14. I think they try to pass the ball in this game against San Francisco. I think they're eventually going to figure out Cooper Kupp. I think he might get a lot of the work early, but they're going to forget about Higbee, and he's going to catch some passes in this game. So I don't dislike it at all. Going with Dawson Knox in your flex. Oh yeah, and I guess looking at your team, fuck, I see why. God, yeah, Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is out 4 to 6 weeks with a hip injury. That sucks. That definitely sucks. And then you got Juju on bye and Hardman on bye. So God, it's 2 tough weeks for you, man. Fuck. No shit, you have to play Dawson Knox in your flex. I think there's some sneaky value there from Dawson Knox. I think he's going to have to score a touchdown to get respectable fantasy points in this game, but he did it. He did it 2 weeks ago before their bye against Kansas City. He had 3 catches, 37 yards, and a touchdown. We're not seeing as much of Dawson Knox so far this year as we had in the past, but maybe week 6 before the bye they figured out they tried to get him more involved in the offense. And I love Buffalo against Green Bay, so yeah, it's not a terrible flex play, but yeah, you don't really have another choice, huh? That sucks. God, you'll be getting shit on here by the Jamar Chase injury sucks. God damn, that blows. And then your 2 buys, not your favorite couple weeks here. It looks like. And then Cincinnati against Cleveland, it's not too bad. They're going to have to figure out how to stop Nick Chubb. I think they can handle Cleveland's offense in the air, because there's so few decent pass catchers in that offense. And they've proven to be a fairly decent rush defense. So if they can keep Nick Chubb at bay and hopefully get ahead in this game. I know the no Jamar Chase part sucks, but they have enough weapons in that offense where I think Cincinnati should be able to get ahead enough where their defense should be able to handle Cleveland in the air if the game script goes that way. So it's not a bad streaming option this week for Cincinnati. I don't think. All right, moving on to Matt Glassmeyer. He is rolling with Jimmy Garoppolo this week, who I traded him here just a few days ago. I know he's been getting similar. The argument to the trade was that he isn't necessarily an improvement over Aaron Rodgers, but he's definitely not a significant downgrade. And my logic going into the trade was that he's got some pretty favorable matchups going forward. But in this one, I think you have to just kind of level out expectations a little bit in this one. He didn't look great against Kansas City, and he doesn't have Debo this week. But he's going to have a McCaffrey with more practices under his belt. He still has a completely capable wide receiver in Brandon Ayuk on the other side, who's really been their wide receiver one this year, more so than Debo has. They play against LA tough. I think you have to temper expectation just a little bit on the road against LA. But I think he could get between 18 and 20 fantasy points. He's done it in every game he's played except for one. So I don't think it's a bad play to play Garoppolo if you don't want to play Aaron Rodgers against the Bills, which I don't blame you whatsoever. I would not do that if I were in that situation. Jonathan Taylor. So I know Jonathan Taylor's been incredibly, violently mediocre this week, or just this season, I mean. He's had 3 weeks out of the 5 games he's played where he's gotten double-digit fantasy points. He got 15.5. I think this has got to be the game. And I've said it several times. This has got to be the game where they got to get him his big game. It's the backup quarterback under center. It's not Matt Ryan. So give the fucking ball to Jonathan Taylor against a bad Washington team. Let his volume. Let him get his fucking game. I think that's what they have to do here. God, the Commanders' rush defense has given up 23 fantasy points per game to opposing backs. So if they don't get him his game this week, if the game plan isn't get the ball in JT's hands and let him go to work, then I don't know if JT's going to have his game. It's all there for him. It's written in the stars. The game plan is there for him, so we'll see what happens. It could be a great matchup for Jonathan Taylor if the Colts don't fuck that up. Kenneth Walker has been fantastic. 3 straight weeks, 17, 19, and 33 against the Chargers. He gets a little bit tougher rush defense this week with the Giants, but that being said, they did also struggle to contain Etienne last week. So I think in Pete Carroll's offense, where he finds a good running back and he just fucking runs him into the ground, you can't help but love Kenneth Walker in this game. I think there's a lot of points in this game. I think both teams are going to have to work to keep it close. So it should work out for Walker to be involved the whole time. So I love him there. Gabe Davis too. It's tough when you have the number one wide receiver on the other side of you and Diggs, but Gabe Davis he's getting the work. He is, and I know it's a lot early. It seems like the playbook is get the ball to Gabe Davis early and often, so they focus on him, and then later in the game, second half, throw to Diggs. If you can get a touchdown out of Gabe Davis, which I think is very possible, I think it's a good game for him. You just hope that volume's there often enough where he gets the fantasy points. He had in the last 2 games he's had 3 catches, but big yards, against Pittsburgh, 3 catches, 171 yards, 2 touchdowns. Against Kansas City, 3 catches, 74 yards, and a touchdown. You got to get him in the end zone if you're going to throw to him if you're only going to get him 3 catches, So it feels like, watching every Buffalo game, that it feels like they're just getting to a Gabe early, getting him his yardage. Let's see if they get him into the end zone to make it a decent fantasy day. You love D-Hop too, DeAndre Hopkins against Minnesota. Minnesota has been struggling against wide receivers. They wasted no time whatsoever getting Hopkins involved in the offense since he came back from suspension. Last week against New Orleans, he had 10 catches, 103 yards, 22 fantasy points. I don't think there's any reason to expect something less than that this week with Kyler Murray and his matchup against Minnesota. So good one there. Kyle Pitts, it's Kyle Pitts. God, who knows? It's a kind of a tough-ish matchup against Carolina, who just completely shut out Tampa Bay last week. And Kyle Pitts is being used as like the fucking more so of like the towel boy and the Gatorade guy and like the team cook more so than you feel like he's being used as the tight end that they used the 4th overall fucking pick in the draft. He's the highest tight end ever picked in the NFL, and they're throwing to him 3 times a game. It's like, what the fuck are we doing here? It's just a bad offense. It's an offense that likes to run the ball more than anything. It's tough to trust Kyle Pitts, especially against a defense that just shut Tom Brady the fuck down. Aaron Jones against Buffalo. Yeah, you just worry about game script here. Aaron Jones is very clearly a capable guy. Buffalo can be beat on the ground. You just worry that if Green Bay gets behind early and often, which I think at some point they're going to get behind big, that Aaron Jones he's just going to kind of have to sit back and watch Aaron Rodgers try to throw the ball to keep Green Bay in the game. But if Green Bay keeps it close, Aaron Jones will be involved. He still is a pass catcher. He had 28 points last week, but he did play against Washington. They're going to face their toughest test in the Buffalo defense this week. So we'll see, but I'm not in love with Aaron Jones this week. And then finally, the Indy defense. I don't hate this play. I know Indy's been kind of shitty. They have only 1 week where they've gotten over 10 fantasy points, but Washington against Heineke, they're playing at home. They're the favorite at home. I actually do like them as the favorite at home in this game. Not a terrible play. Washington's very turnover heavy. Heineke definitely, I think, is going to throw at least a pick or 2 in this game. He did it all last year, before Carson Wentz got there. So, it's not a bad streaming option for Indy this week. I think there are worse ones out there. They're a middle of the pack defense. So, it's a pretty low scoring projection. It's 113 to 105.2. I'm sorry, Matt Morelli, Dr. Payne. I'm sorry, bud, but yeah, you've been getting cucked by the buys and Chase. I think your flex situation leaves a little bit to be desired, and the Melvin Gordon one and Michael Gallup. It's a tough week for you on paper. I think Matt's got the better matchups. I think he wins this one comfortably. If I'm being honest, sorry, don't unfriend me because of that, but got to give the lean to Matt G on this one. Okay, and finally we have Vic versus Abby. Miss DQT. Oh, she changed it. DQT. Dairy Queen toddler. Q has to be queen. There's nothing else that could be queen. Or nothing else that could be Q. DQT. Anyway, I won't waste your time trying to think about that for a while. Let's go ahead and just get into it here. Abby is projected as a pretty significant favorite, 133.6 to 107.8. We'll go ahead and start on her side here because she did have Mike Evans go on Thursday night, who had 6 catches for 123 yards and 20.3 fantasy points. It was a great day for Mike Evans, which could have been better if he didn't drop this absolute lollipop of a guaranteed touchdown early in the game. God, he was all by himself. The pass was perfect. It just fucking bounced off his hands, and he dropped just like a absolute fucking honey pot of a touchdown. But made up for it by still getting 123 yards on 6 catches. It just could have been even better. But I don't think Abby will be disappointed with 20.3 fantasy points out of Mike Evans. And in that struggling offense, Evans continues to be the bright spot, even with Godwin, kind of catching up and becoming more of a focal point. But yeah, good start there for Mike Evans. Let's see. So she's rocking with Andy Dalton at QB this week because Mahomes is on bye. But it's still a good projection, 133.6 is still a good projection, even having Mahomes on bye. But Andy Dalton, he got 40 points against Arizona, which is, when you just look at it, you're like, fuck, that's really, really good. But they did lose because he turned over the ball, like, literally, he had 3 picks in that game. So, you're never going to be disappointed with 40 points, but you got to keep the fucking picks down, man. You got to cut the turnovers out. I don't think he's going to get 40 points against Vegas, even though I do like I do like New Orleans in this game. There was a huge question whether or not they were going to bench Andy Dalton for Jameis Winston, which initially was the plan, and then they kind of U-turned on it and said, "No, okay, well, let's give Andy Dalton one more time, see how he does against Vegas." Yeah, I don't think he's getting 40 fantasy points, but I think it's not bad. It's Vegas are beatable in the air for sure, and yeah, I don't know. I'm not quite sure about this one, but I think it's okay. You know, I think it's okay. You worry that the Saints they have limited pass catchers other than like Olave and even like God maybe Alvin Kamara, I guess. But if he's at least half as good as he was in that game and cuts the picks out as he was against Arizona, not a bad option if you can't go Mahomes this week. Dalvin Cook against Arizona. Now, Dalvin Cook, Abby tried to just throw him in the garbage like a fetus after prom, but didn't work out, and she has to use him. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Dalvin Cook he's Dalvin Cook. He's matchup proof. I don't know what you should. I don't think you should ever trade him. He's the number 14 ranked running back in fantasy. The Cardinals' rush defense has been pretty good. They've only given up the 11th fewest fantasy points to running backs, but it's just a volume thing, and it's going to be a game script thing. I don't think Cook's ever going to not be involved in the offense, so you got to play him. It's not a bad matchup there at all. Who has a much better matchup, I think, is Dameon Pierce against Tennessee. Tennessee has been giving up, almost 4.6 yards per carry to tailbacks, which is really good. That whole offense is just running through Pierce right now. I think this game stays close enough where they get to use Pierce the whole time, and they're much more effective on the ground than they are as a passing team. Houston is so. Whereas I do like Tennessee in this game, I think it does stay close enough where Pierce gets his workload pretty much the whole game. He has gotten over 10 fantasy points in the last 4 weeks. He got 15, 20, 39, or 30.9, and then 18 against Chicago. He's proven to rush well against tough rush defenses, so you can't help but like Pierce in that one. He's become a matchup-proof guy as well. Amari Cooper. I like Amari Cooper in this game, honestly. It's a really weird, if you go look at the stats, he is horrible on the road, but he's great at home. I don't know why that is, but if you're a believer in that pattern and that stat, then you like him in this game against Cincinnati, who only have they have a moderate pass defense, and Amari Cooper, he's gotten double-digit fantasy points in 5 of his 7 games, 10.4, 14, 20, 25, 27. Yeah, it's reasonable to expect a decent game out of Amari Cooper in a game where I think Cleveland's going to have to throw the ball to play catch-up in this game. So, yeah, I think you like Amari Cooper there. So Abby's going with Freiermuth, who I traded her here just the other day. Freiermuth has been great. He's double digits in 5 of 7 games. He got 15.5 last week against Miami. Whereas I do like Freiermuth. I think you just have to kind of just be aware of what you're getting out of him this week against Philly. Philly is they're so tough. That defense is just so tough. That's probably one of the most well-rounded teams in the NFL right now. So don't be surprised if Freiermuth finishes with like a little, maybe under 10 fantasy points this week, or around 10. I don't want you. I don't want you coming to me, Abby, thinking I ripped you off because he had a bad matchup this week. I think he just has a tough matchup this week. So just kind of go with limited expectations on him this week. He's a great tight end. He's one of the better pass catchers in that offense, but I just don't like anybody against Philly. So just be aware of that. Much like myself with Tyler Boyd, Abby kind of hit the lottery with T. Higgins. He's great anyway, but now he goes into a kind of a different level now that Jamar Chase is going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks. Higgins is now wide receiver 1 in that offense, and he's playing against a Cleveland team that is very beatable in the air. and playing with a quarterback that loves to throw the ball, in Joe Burrow. So Higgins, you have to love Higgins, his value now with Jamar Chase being out. You loved him anyway, but now you really, really like him as wide receiver one in a super pass heavy offense in Cincinnati. So you love T. Higgins in your flex for sure. And then Carolina against Atlanta. I like the play. Atlanta's a bad offense. They try to run the ball a lot. Mariota I just don't think he's a very good quarterback. He struggles to pass. And they're coming in hot after just smacking around Tampa Bay and Tom Brady. So I think this is a game that sucks. I think this is a game that is low scoring, but I do like Carolina to win this game, and I think a lot of it's going to be done on their defense. They have a 13th ranked defense. It's not bad at all. I know they only got 5 last week against Tampa Bay, and they got 9 against the Rams. They play tough. So it's not a bad option this week at all for Carolina. So yeah, it's good matchups for Abby. I think a couple toughies in there for sure, but there's enough good ones in there to be excited about. Alrighty, moving over here to Vic. He's projected at 107.8. He did have Mark Andrews go on Thursday, which is a little bit of a risk because he's been dealing with some injury. He did play on Thursday, but he did get hurt. So he was only limited to 3 catches for 33 yards and 6.3 points. I believe, I'll go look here, but I believe it was a shoulder injury. It was, yeah. And he had been dealing with like a knee injury prior to that too. So it sucks because Mark Andrews has just been like the guy for Baltimore for so long, But now that he's starting to get injured, it's tough. It's tough year to own Mark Andrews when it hasn't been in the past, So too bad for Mark Andrews. Just 6.3 points in Vic's tight end spot there on Thursday. Could have been a lot more if his shoulder didn't blow out or whatever happened to him. All right, starting back up here at the top with Daniel Jones against Seattle. I think that's definitely the better play than Russell Wilson is. Daniel Jones, he's running a good offense right now, and he's doing a lot of it on the ground too. He rushed for 107 yards and a touchdown against Jacksonville last week. And he's gotten good double-digit scoring in every week so far. 32 was his best week last week. It's an offense that's clicking for him, and I was always a big Danny Dimes hater. And I still think he's probably in like that next tier. He's like, there's the S tier with like Mahomes and Josh Allen, and then there's like the A tier guys. Probably maybe not this year, but probably like the Bradys, the Aaron Rodgers, those kind of guys. I think he's probably in that next tier down. I think he's just a good. I think this year especially, he's just a decent, good, solid quarterback, and I don't blame you for going against him with Seattle here. I think there's just such a high potential for high scoring in this game, and his rushing ability, you don't get that with a ton of quarterbacks. So any quarterback that likes to rush the ball, yeah, I think you got to go with them. So Daniel Jones is a solid play in my opinion against Seattle on Sunday afternoon. Jamal Williams. Now DeAndre Swift, the starting running back, is healthy, but I think Jamal Williams plays a change of pace role here, like he had been in the past. Even at the start of the season when Swift was playing, he was getting 16 fantasy points. He got 24. He got 28 one week. I think in a game where Detroit is probably going to have to throw the ball, I like Williams to come in here as just kind of a change of pace guy and to catch some passes. So whereas it's not the strongest play at running back, which makes sense because you got Clyde Edwards-Helaire on bye and Damian Harris, who is becoming just like a puppet of that offense and doing nothing. I don't blame you for wanting to play Jamal Williams there, so not too bad. Latavius Murray, kind of the same situation I was talking about with Matt and his running back situation there. You don't love the Broncos backfield. You probably like Murray out of everybody who runs the ball now, I guess. To me, anyway, he seemed like the guy who's been most effective. He could bust in for a score against Jacksonville if the Broncos happen to wander into red zone territory around the goal line. I don't know how often they're going to do that, but He managed to score last week against the Jets, 10.3. He managed to score against Minnesota when he was still playing for the Saints, 13.5. It's tough to like any Bronco, especially in the running game, but yeah, you don't know. You never know. It's probably touchdown dependent, but I think Murray's an okay play, I guess, if you're struggling at running back. Terry McLaurin, he doesn't have a great matchup, but I don't think you can ever bench Terry McLaurin. I just don't think you can. I think he's proven capable enough, even in a bad Washington team, where you have to play him no matter what. I really do like Indy in this game. I think Indy forces some turnovers, and I think that eats into McLaurin's points a little bit, but he's gotten double-digit points in 5 of 7 games. He got 18.3 against Green Bay, 12 against Tennessee. He got 18 against Philly, and 102 yards against Philly, which is crazy to me. So you have to play McLaurin. I think you expect maybe not a huge day from him in this one, in my opinion, but you also don't know what version of the Colts you're ever going to get. So if you get a shitty Colts, McLaurin will have a good game. I just think they're going to play tough at home in this one for their backup quarterback who's starting. Robert Woods playing against Houston. Yeah, it's tough with him. He was decent last year. He's coming off a torn ACL, and it's tough to expect a guy to be booming after that. It's kind of hit or miss for him. He had in weeks 3 and 4, he had 12 and 13 points, but he's been under 10 in every week since that. I just don't really like any Titan that isn't Derrick Henry, I guess, especially in this game where Houston is just so susceptible to the run. I think Derrick Henry's going to get like 25 carries and like 150 yards. So it's tough to like Woods in general, but I just don't like him particularly in this game. I think that's a tough one. But you got to like Cooper Kupp, obviously. Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp. His floor is like 16 points. So if on a bad day, if you get 16 points out of Cooper Kupp, you can't really complain. As much as Kansas City smacked around San Francisco last week, you have to like Cooper Kupp to get involved heavily in this one too. I think he could have like 100 receiving yards and a touchdown. I think we're going to see closer to like the 20-25 plus game for him this week. So yeah, and a game where I just like the Rams at home too. So I think Cooper Kupp's heavily involved here. Like I said, San Francisco didn't really do a great job at stopping the pass last week against Mahomes. So if the Rams are on their game, if Stafford isn't terrible, you gotta like Cooper Kupp here. And then Buffalo defense, yeah, beauty. I know you didn't. You just kind of played them while they on their bye last week, which probably wouldn't have mattered anyway. But I can see why you wouldn't want to just move them out of that spot at all. You have to love Buffalo's defense here. Yeah, it's just they're at home, prime time. Aaron Rodgers has been struggling. Not much more to say than that. You gotta love Buffalo. So overall, yeah, I think the projection's fair here. 133.6 for Abby and 107 for Vic. Vic's got some toughies in his lineup here. The running back game is not strong with Williams and Murray. Robert Woods isn't in a great spot here. Kind of an iffy one for McLaurin. The only ones you really like are Daniel Jones, Kupp, and Buffalo, which kind of contribute to the 107 projection. Whereas Abby just has some big matchups here, and already getting 20 out of Mike Evans helps a lot. So yeah, the Higgins, the Pierces, and even Andy Dalton here, I think you just gotta take Abby on kind of the big spread here. So sorry, Vic, but that's just kind of the way I see it. You of all people know how much I'm wrong about stuff, so you'll be hoping that this is just another one of those times. Yep, and that will do it. So yeah, that is those are my predictions for week 8 here. I'll go ahead and I'll listen back to this, early next week when I do my Tuesday email. I think it sounded like a lot of you guys liked me going over my predictions and seeing what I was right and wrong about. I heard from a couple of you that like doing that, and I think it's, like I said, I think it's important to highlight all the shit that I'm wrong about. I never want to give off the impression that I know everything about fantasy football, because I don't think literally anybody knows anything about fantasy football, even the guys that get paid 100 grand a year to talk about it. I think that's the greatest job in the world, because like I said in my email, it's like being the weatherman. You can just be wrong. You can be totally wrong every day and still have a job. I just make my prediction. I spend so much of my week going over stats and having to do predictions and looking at stats for the previews and the recaps. So these are just, and obviously I bet, I sports bet, and Sam and I sports bet, and Matt and all that stuff. So these are just all the God damn, if I could speak, the predictions that I make based on just all the research that I do. And I was wrong quite a bit last week, as you saw. So the one thing I just didn't want to do this week was go against myself, make the predictions, and then bet against what I predicted, because I did that a lot last week, and I was right about a lot of stuff I predicted, but it ended up costing me some money. So, like I said, it's important to me. I like to be transparent about the stuff that I'm wrong about, especially, and I kind of like to, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like to brag about the stuff that I'm right about. It's kind of nice to be right about stuff sometimes. So. Anyway, yeah, I'll go ahead and get this pumped out to you guys here later today, and then we'll be ready to rock on Tuesday for the recap email. So if you saw my email, please go ahead and send me your top 5 Halloween candies. I'm doing a thing for my email next week. I want to see what everybody says and compare it, and then potentially grill you if your choices suck. So if you're listening to it, if you got this far, please send me your candy selections. Thank you so much for listening again, and I will talk to you guys on Tuesday. Peace.